After 10 years of research, I've realized two truths about teaching. Teaching truth number one, teaching is hard. Trying to meet the needs of 25 or more individual students, all with their own strengths, goals, needs, and plans, can feel overwhelming. Yes, teaching is hard, which leads me to teaching truth number two. Sometimes we make it harder. We do, because we're human, and it's human to resist what's difficult. But when we push against it, when we resist it, when we wish it was different, we make it harder than it has to be. We can become discouraged and depleted. Instead, if we accept the hard, if we embrace the hard, we can find satisfaction and joy in the hard.
Dr. Julie Hasson is a professor, researcher, international speaker, and author. With decades of experience as a teacher and principal, she knows firsthand how an educator's battery can get depleted. Julie created the Teacher Recharge Framework to help educators navigate the demands of the work with peace, joy, and purpose. Julie's research-based books and inspirational podcast have helped educators around the world keep making ripples.
I developed the Teacher Recharge Framework to give teachers practical strategies to help them stay energized and engaged. The 3 R's of recharge are developing strong relationships, practicing reframing challenges as opportunities, and developing resilience. So relationships, reframing, and resilience are the 3 R's of Teacher Recharge. Remember that arcade game, Whack-A-Mole, where the moles would pop up and you would have to hit them with the mallet? And some days are like that. Whatever pops up, I'm whacking, right? Fire by fire, thing by thing. And at the end of the day, I'm exhausted, but I feel like I haven't accomplished anything. But if we can figure out how to set an intention, at the end of the day, we can measure our success by that intention. And I couldn't wait to ask Amanda, what did you write on that note? She looked at me kind of funny and said, all I wrote was, looks like you're having a bad day. Let me know if I can help. I'm glad you're here. It took her 60 seconds to notice and respond to that student's struggle. And in that 60 seconds, she solidified and strengthened that relationship. We often hear about the power of student-teacher relationships, but how do we make that abstract notion concrete? We do just what Amanda did. We notice when a student is struggling, we respond to that need, and we strengthen the relationship. And by doing that, we can engage the student in our lesson, and by doing that, we can find more joy and satisfaction in our work. Because when we are engaged as teachers, it's easier to engage our students. What's good for them is good for us. What's good for us as teachers is good for our students. And I say to myself, man, I would be such a great teacher if it wasn't for these students. And then I realize it is not my job to teach a perfect lesson. It is my job to teach the imperfect people sitting in front of me. It is my job to help them learn and grow and stretch and become the best possible versions of themselves, because they wouldn't remember that perfect lesson anyway. Our students don't remember being taught. They remember being transformed. Remember, the energy you bring to your classroom matters. I heard about the importance of energy when I was working in a food bank with a man named Marcus. Like all strangers do, we started to talk to each other about our work. I told him about my research, and he told me about his favorite teacher, Mrs. Pope. He said Mrs. Pope was his high school home economics teacher, and he loved home ec because on Fridays they cooked. And often they got to eat some of what they cooked. And on this one particular Friday, he remembers making chocolate chip cookies. When they cooled, Mrs. Pope said, you can each eat one. But he knew she saw him put 3 more in his pocket when she asked him to stay after class. Marcus said he expected a lecture, maybe a referral to the principal, or to be excluded from cooking again. But instead, Mrs. Pope asked a question. Are you hungry? And he said he was. He told his teacher that his father left a couple of months ago, his mom wasn't doing well, there wasn't much food at home, and their electricity had been off for a while. Yes, he was hungry. Then he noticed Mrs. Pope looked down at the spots on his shirt. And she said, you know, there's a wash machine and dryer here in the home ec classroom. If you bring your clothes in, you can wash them here and pick them up after school. So he brought some clothes by the next day, And he remembers coming back after school to get his clothes. They were neatly folded and they smelled so good. And next to the clothes was a brown paper bag with his name written on it. When he looked inside the bag, he found cans of soup, crackers, and other snacks. Marcus told me his clothes were washed in that home ec classroom more times than he can count. And his teacher and her church group were the only reason he ate most nights. He said, Mrs. Pope is gone now, and I can't repay her for her kindness. So instead, I try to pay it forward by working in the food bank. Marcus and Mrs. Pope are such a great example of staying in the sweet spot. There were so many parts of Marcus's situation that Mrs. Pope couldn't control. But what she could do was feed a young man's body, mind, and soul. And by doing so, she changed the trajectory of his life. When we focus on that sweet spot, that intersection between what really matters and what we can control, we can stay longer, we can grow stronger, we can help our students, and we can keep making ripples.